Hey students, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are finding productive ways, creative ways to spend your time as we come into summer. I'm sure a lot of you guys are getting out, heading to the beaches. Maybe even some of you have enjoyed the extra waves that have been around this area the past week or so. Hey, today I want to just pose a question for you, just to really get you thinking. The question is, what upsets the heart of God? You know, for me personally, like as I've been reading through the Bible, I'm in the Old Testament right now, you see God getting upset. God gets upset at certain things, and you know, like I'm not the smartest person in the world, but there's some really obvious things that God gets upset with when it comes to like the Israelites and their story. But then there's other times in the Bible where I'm like, man, I just don't understand, like, what is it that God is upset with here? Like, there has to be a reason because he's God, but what is it? And so over the past few weeks, as I've kind of had this question kind of rattling around in my brain, you know, what upsets the heart of God? I've just been doing a lot of thinking, been doing a lot of searching in the scriptures, and I want to just give you a couple of things that I've come across lately, and you can think about those, you can process those, and then in the end, I want to tell you what I want you to do with that information. The first thing I want to talk about is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy upsets the heart of God. Matthew 7:3-5 says, "And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, 'Let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye,' when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite! First, get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye." Now, when you read through the story of Jesus, you see him call out the Pharisees, this religious group of people. He calls them out all the time, and he calls them hypocrites. These were people, the reason he does this, these are people who on the outside, like to the rest of the world, they looked great. They portrayed this image that they were basically perfect. They followed all the rules, so they were perfect and they had everything together. But Jesus, who knew their hearts, he knew better. He knew they were not. He knew they were preaching one thing, and then in private they were living completely different from what they were preaching. And by definition, that is a hypocrite, and that upsets the heart of God. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of along the same lines, but it's the idea of lukewarm living. Lukewarm living upsets the heart of God. And so this is similar to hypocrisy, but this is basically when you say you believe one thing, and then you only live it out when it's kind of convenient for you. Revelation 3:16 says, "But since you are like lukewarm water, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth." If you were on our church online service a few weeks ago, I actually taught on this verse. You can go back and find it on our YouTube channel. But this would basically be someone who lived a life pleasing to God on Sundays, maybe even on Wednesdays, and then the rest of the week they just lived however they wanted. Just lived the same way the rest of the world is living. Or maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe like you go to this camp, like a summer camp or a fall retreat or something like that, and you just get on fire for Jesus for like a week or a month. And then like a month later, you're like back to where you were before, and you just don't care anymore. You're not really trying anymore. This is lukewarm living, and that kind of life is upsetting to God. The next thing I want to talk about is injustice. Injustice upsets the heart of God. God is a God of justice, and that is written all over the Bible. Like we as believers who can, we should speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. We should fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Isaiah 1:17 says, "Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of orphans, fight for the rights of widows." There are people all around us who don't have a voice. But God says we, as believers, should fight, defend, help, seek. Those are strong action words. I mean, there are people who are all around us who actually do have a voice, but for whatever reason, they're not being heard. We should fight, defend, help, seek. We should do good for those people. That is the heart of God. God does not stand for injustice. That upsets his heart. The next thing I want to talk about is rejection. Rejection of God, it really upsets his heart. Romans 1:18-21 says, "But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God has made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or give him thanks." See, everyone is given a chance to choose God. Not everyone does. And obviously, God does not like that. Rejection of God upsets his heart. Now, I had a list of maybe 10 other things that I wanted to talk about, but I don't want to just give you guys a list of hey, here's everything that upsets God. I mean, yeah, this list is good and there's a million other things that we could say, but it all boils down to sin and sin's consequences. If you go back and read Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, there wasn't anything bad, there wasn't anything that upset God until sin entered the world. After that, everything changed. And so whatever you can put on a list that upsets God or you believe upsets God, they're all related to sin. And so injustice, natural disasters, discrimination, birth defects, homelessness, anything else that you can think of, they all trace back to sin. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that sin upsets the heart of God. Students, I don't want this to just be a list. I don't want this to just be informative. I want this to challenge your life. As we wrap up, I just want to challenge you to search your heart, do an inventory, and ask God to show you if there's anything in your heart that is upsetting to him. And if there is, use this as an opportunity to repent, to turn the other way, turn from living opposite of God's way, and not live your way anymore. Live God's way from now on. I just want to challenge you to ask God some really good questions. Ask God to search you right now, and then listen to what he says and respond. Students, I hope these last few minutes have been challenging and encouraging for you, and I really, really hope that we get to see each other soon.